This is Patrick Russell. I am interviewing Clyde Freeman for the first time. This interview is taking place on August the 3rd, 2021 in Clinton, Oklahoma. This interview is being conducted by the Making History Project. How are you doing today, Clyde?
Doing real good.
All right. And can you tell me what your date of birth is?
August the 15th, 1926.
And where were you born?
Over to Oklahoma.
And can you describe your hometown for me when you were growing up?
Well, it was a farming community. Basically, the farmers were, well, some cattle specific and some were cotton. Others were grains of different kinds. Cattle feeding. What heck. Very, very wonderful little community that we lived in.
About how many people live in Hobart when you were there?
I imagine right now it's around 12,000. I'm not sure on that. I may be a little high, I might be a little low. I'm not sure.
All right, so a smaller town.
It's a small town.
And how big was your family when you were growing up?
Well, of course, Mom and Dad, and there was Joe, Ralph, Clyde, Leon, and Johnny. All boys but no daughters.
Wow. And where were you in that group?
I was in the middle.
Okay. And what did your parents do?
They were farmers, but in being a farmer, you dealt with cattle, and we milked about 8 or 10 cows. We had some beef cattle, but on the other hand, we had in the swine, or pigs as we call them, we had that branch of our farming operation. We had chickens and turkeys in different seasons of different years. But basically it was just right down to the what can you produce on the farm, in the poultry or farming, whatever.
Okay. And what kind of things did you do as a kid?
Well, of course, went to what we called a community school, where Oklahoma and Texas met. The Red River branch spotted out, came down across, divided the two states. And we were in Oklahoma. Of course, across the border, across the field would be in the Texas area, but we were in that area of Oklahoma, Texas, and coming down out of the north, the borderlines of these two states. We were not too far from the border. The county we lived in joined the border. Yeah. That okay?
And did you have any type of hobbies or play sports? What did you do?
Well, the sports were in the little rural schools were county meeting. We have county track meets, county, you'd have the different levels of the educational field. In county meetings. It was a good country to live in, I'll tell you that.
Did you play any sports? Like, did you run track or baseball, football?
Basically, on the farm, Dad and Mom said, come on home after school is out. We've got work to do. We didn't enjoy too many of the sports, really, as far as my brother, older, me, or my younger. If we had a county track meet once a year, and we'd enter little 100-yard, 50-yard run, high jump or something like that. Just county track meets of kids from the first grade through the senior grade, 12th grade, when we graduated and ready for college at that age.
And
School.
Where did you go to school? What was the name of your high school?
It was Big Elk. Big Elk School. Big Elk. Elk Creek started way up next to the Kansas line, you know. There's the drainage off of the ranches and farms. But it became a pretty good stream when it got down to Kiowa County, where we live. It was a pretty good stream. It pretty well ran, the stream ran year round. So that's basically where, and it ran into what we call Big Elk Creek, which ran into the North Fork of the Red River. So it was in that settlement of the drainage of the country. It's where I live.
And what was your most memorable moment in high school?
In high school, I don't know, you have the sports. Now, I didn't really play in the sport field too. We had different meetings over the counties of speech and so forth. We'd meet in Hobart, Kiowa County. We'd meet there as these little public schools, 3-room schools. The little room, the big room, first, second, third, fourth grade one, and fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, which were then ready to go into high school. But anyhow, it was the development of that section of the rural America, Kiowa County.
And did you graduate from high school?
Yes, high school. I graduated from a school called Port School. Dad bought a new farm and built a new house in the Port School community, and that's where I went. Drove a school bus as a senior. It was an interesting young age for me, from the first grade through the 12th grade before we got ready to go to college.
Okay, and what did you do after high school?
Well, that was following up World War II, of course, and I wound up in the service, and I was in the Army, and of course we were happy that the war ended, and it was a good age. I lived in a really wonderful age at that period of my life, and it's been good all my life. I've had a wonderful life.
Carla Humphreys, call 2283. Carla, call 2283.
When you were in high school, was World War II already ongoing?
It was ongoing, but the war was over about the time I graduated. That was a good relief to me that I was not going to be going into the Army, which I did. I went into the Army, but it didn't have to take the life of another fellow human being by shooting in the ground. I was thankful the war was over at that time.
And when did you graduate from high school?
1944, being May of 1944.
And did you enlist in the Army or were you drafted?
Both. I could have got by with a farm deferment, but I was ready to go because my brother, older than I, he was in the final battles in Germany. He was in Germany, but I went to Japan. I didn't go to Germany. I chose the going west through California and there toward Hawaii and toward Japan. I was in Sashikawa, Japan, if that might ring a bell with some of the people that are listening to it.
And how did your family feel about you joining the Army?
Well, of course, we were so thankful that there was no more war between Japan and America. We were no longer enemies, we became friends. And I think we made good friends with the Japanese, or at least I felt good toward the Japanese people. When I got to Japan, I didn't see them as enemies. I saw them there as friends. And I feel that friendship still exists today with Japan.
And when you went into the Army, where did you do your basic training?
At Camp Livingston, Louisiana.
And how was basic training for you?
Well, it was getting acquainted with the equipment that we used in the war, because we were right in part of the war in my training. But before I had finished my training, the war was over. And I was so very thankful that the German people were good people and the Americans were good people, and why not be friends instead of shooting at one another? But Hitler, for some reason, had that thought in mind, but I never did understand why he wanted to attack and bomb in Japan doing the same thing. But there's no reason to this fighting like that. Let's sit down at the table and make some agreements with one another. And I think that philosophy is strong even today. Let's work our problems out, not on the battlefield, but across the table, which is the best way to go.
And so when you were training, is that when the atom bomb was dropped on Japan?
Somewhere in that period of time. I'm not sure just exactly when that happened, but it's tragedy. And when I boarded the ship going to Japan in the occupation of Japan, we went by Pearl Harbor. Going, I didn't see it, but coming back, I got to see where Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor and all that. And I could see then some of the reason that the fighting happened. It wasn't the Japanese people. This was a leadership that had some reason that I'll never understand, that they wanted to have a fight with the United States. But shoot, we were friends. When peace came and I went to Japan and we made friends with the Japanese people, I had young Japanese boys that when they went back to find their home territory and they came back to the base where I was serving in the 1st Cavalry, he said nothing. He could not find any kind of contact with family or what. And he wanted to come back to the States with me. He was my friend. But I said, oh shoot, I can't do it. But anyhow, we made good friends with the Japanese people and I love them. It was not the people, it was the leadership that made a bad mistake. I'm thankful that America was able to be victors in the conflict, and we today are good friends with the Japanese. No problem. That I know of.
And so you're in the Army, you're in the 1st Cavalry, you say?
Yes.
All right. And what are you training to do in the 1st Cavalry?
Well, basically, it was just armed conflict.
A soldier?
So
Infantry?
Yeah, a soldier.
Okay.
But anyhow, I was so thankful that after the war was over that I did not have to point a rifle at any living human being and take their lives. We didn't want to take Japanese people's lives.
So you entered the Army in 1944?
1944, in that period of time.
And you got out of the Army what year?
I imagine it was in the latter part of 45. I don't know just exactly right now.
And what was your highest rank in the Army?
Well, I guess sergeant was one of my, at the time it's right, that rank that I had was a sergeant.
Sergeant. Okay. And what did you end up doing?
Well,
So the war ended, so you weren't going to go fighting anymore, but what did you do?
There was housing problems at that time, getting housing for the people that were disturbed in the war, and it all come out very peaceful, I think. America did a real good job of hey, we're not at war anymore, and let's help Japan. And we helped Japan all we could. I think we have a good relationship with the Japanese people as Americans. And as far as I know right now, worldwide, we have good relationship. We went to Japan, and there were the people that we fought, and we made good relationship with Japan. They're good people. Bad leader, but the Japanese people, good people. Don't sell them short. They're hard workers, and And I enjoy the Japanese people that I met, worked with. In fact, the young boys that worked in my office, I was a section chief of the Adjutant General's office, AG Miscellaneous. And the boys that worked with me, they said, take me with you. Little Japanese boys, 12, 13, 14, 15, that worked there, went back home, but could not find their folks. Their folks had been disturbed. And I hope after we left, they were able to find them someplace. But they came back to my unit there in Tokyo, and they said, take me with you, take me with you. I was a friend to them. And I said, oh, I can't take you with me. But today, my thought was, I hope that those boys that worked with me as runners here and there, I hope they were able to find some segment of their family and became happy families built again after the war was over. But they're good people. Don't sell the Japanese people as being bad people. They had bad leaders that got bombed Pearl Harbor. I never saw Pearl Harbor until I came back from overseas. Boy, was it a mess. I didn't realize we went around it going overseas to Japan, but when we came back, we came by Pearl Harbor. And it was a terrible, destroyed city and everything. I can see America's reasoning for being in that conflict after Tojo had done what he did. But I thought, well, let's forgive Tojo. Let's forgive the people that brought the war on in Japan against America. Let's forgive that. Get back to be friends. There's nothing like being a good friend with Japan because they're good people. That's the best thing that I could say right now. Of course, I'm looking at it a lot of years later, but I don't see any reason to say that we were enemies with Japan. They had a leader that was an enemy to us and bombed Pearl Harbor and all that. It was not those people out there that were citizens in their community. They loved their family just like we do. So I think today, this day, when we went over and worked with the Japanese people, I hope that we've got real good relations with those people that are in Japan against me today, because I have good feelings toward them. They're hardworking, good people. You got to be careful of who's your leader and what his idea is. But I think America did a real good job, after Pearl Harbor, and I got to see what was done, where they fought, bombed Pearl Harbor and all that. I can see a reason that we had to do it, but not because of the people. Japanese good people, hard-working.
And so you deployed overseas to Japan.
Yes.
And this is part of the occupation, correct?
Sashigama.
Okay. And what did you do specifically in Japan?
Well, of course, there was a lot of help to go to Japan. I mean, when you saw the bombing and what it did to the families of Japan, it was bad. And I got to help administer food and clothing and things like that to the Japanese people. And we hugged one another. We were not enemies then. And today I would like to express that as far as Clyde Freeman is concerned, I love the Japanese people. What was done in the war, oh, that was terrible. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, I didn't see Pearl Harbor until I was on my way back to America. And Pearl Harbor was a destroyed harbor. I mean, there was nothing there. So, but that was the effect of Japan's bombing of Pearl Harbor and our going over and saying you shouldn't do that. And I think after we went over, we made good friends. We were not enemies of the Japanese people, we were friends too. And I'm thankful that our government had that philosophy. Go back, boys, and make friends with them
And rebuild.
and rebuild. Yeah.
Now, did you go to Tokyo?
Yes, I got to see Tokyo. Uh, we normally out here in the West, every city will have a junkyard that you can take your junk stuff to that place. This is pre-World Harbor. This is pre-war. I don't know how it is now. It's different. But anyhow, Japan looked like a junkyard. It was terrible. It was sad. You could see the buildings that were destroyed by the bombing and so forth. There's nothing to be proud of, but it settled the war. I wasn't proud of World War II, but we made friends. I guarantee you what, if I met a Japanese today, I'd shake hands with him and give him a hug, because we're friends, no longer enemies.
Did you see any other cities in Japan?
Sasagawa, Sapporo, Tokyo. We were in several of those bombed cities. It's bad. It's terrible. No joy or happiness in looking at something like that. I cried for the Japanese people like I cried for the people over here in America that were hit by the bombs. We were bombed too, you know. And I felt sorry for the people that were in it. But it was the leadership of those nations that had to come to an agreement with. After the war, Japan said, oh, we've had enough. But the Japanese children, I had a young man that worked with me as a runner in my office there in Sasagawa. And he came to me one day, and I'll go home. And he was from right down on the southern tip of Japan. This was his home. And we bought him new shoes, new uniform and everything, put him on the train to go home. And I was working in my office a few days later, I'd say a week or two later, and I looked up, and there stood the little young 15-year-old, 16 maybe, year old boy crying. Nothing. No family, no home. And I cried with him. But we had to come home. He said, take me with you, take me with you. He wanted to come to America with me. I said, well, hey, I'm just a kid myself. I can't take you. But he was a good boy.
You remember his name?
Oh, we called him Goop, but that wasn't his name.
And you mentioned to me before that you also worked with the Russians.
Well,
Tell me about that.
The Russian people are good people. I find people good. I don't find people. Russia, of course, you know, had people that had gone up into the Alaskan area. They had gone back into their area, and I was in that part of the nation working. Those people had settled back toward the Russian border, and the war was over, and we were friends, no longer fighting one another. And I was so happy that the war was over, and I wasn't shooting at one of them, but I was making a friend with one of the Russian boys. We're all people under God of heaven. God should be the God of each one of us that we worship, Jehovah. But anyhow, I think we've got a good relationship with other nations now, as far as I know. I don't know what our politicians are thinking, but as far as I know, we're good friends with all of the nations.
How did you get from Japan to dealing with the Russians? How did that happen?
The Russians were very quiet. their villages that they were put into were not fighting us. Then the war was over, and of course our ships from America were bringing food to both of us, and it wasn't long until Japan was able to go back into production. You can imagine what Japan looked like after the war. I felt so sorry for them, but I was so proud of America and helping them build back. America went to work to restore these companies that were destroyed. You know, they had factories that were destroyed because our destroying Tokyo and those more places tore them up. They were junkyards, we might say. But I'm so thankful that America didn't say, okay, there you are. We went over and helped them rebuild them. And as far as I'm concerned, I have a love in my heart for the Japanese people. Not because of what they did in Pearl Harbor, but because of what we did when we got together as people.
You mentioned that you were involved in negotiations with the Russians about borders. Well, tell me about that.
Well, I wasn't involved, but I was up there in the tip point of Japan where Russia came across, and our diplomats that America had in their service, they made the agreements. And we turned around where we had torn them up, went to helping them rebuild. Right? I'm so thankful for being an American, because I'll tell you what, when an enemy did what they did at Pearl Harbor and then what we did to them in Tokyo and Yokohama, and when we said, hey fellas, we'll help you rebuild, I'm so thankful that I could say those things in support of America. We had good leadership, and of course, after I saw Pearl Harbor the first time, and I didn't see Pearl Harbor going overseas, but I saw Pearl Harbor when I came back. Boy, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, Japan did, boy, they tore it up. It wasn't anything there, I mean. And I know that a lot of our American people their lives were taken under those bomb raids. But today I'm so thankful for peaceful agreements between Japan and America and all of the nations that I know of. Even the Russian people today, I think we have good relationship with Russia. I don't think we have, what few Russians I met, they're just like we are. They're people making a living. I think they're just good people. I think God made people good. He didn't make them to fight. But sometimes they had to fight during the biblical times, but it was trying to establish, I think, under the side of God, a system of government. Christianity is the answer to the whole world problem if they'll accept it. You accept your enemy. You'll feed the enemy. If your enemy comes to you hungry, you're going to feed him. And let's make friends. Let's don't make enemies. That's my, yeah, I'm preaching to you a sermon again. I don't know. You can't put this in what you're publishing.
When did you return to the States?
Oh, I don't know just exactly the date right now. I imagine I spent about a year overseas. I'm not sure.
So towards the end of 1945?
45.
Yeah.
44, 45.
And how were you welcomed when you returned home?
Ooh, they loved me. I think we've got good relations around the world, as far as I know. Do we have any enemies that are fighting us now? I don't know of one. Do you know of any enemy that hates America and would bomb Pearl Harbor? I don't know of them.
What did you do after you got home?
Well, my father was a farmer, so guess what? There's a whole handle of good. There's goat heads out there in that cotton patch. Let's get those goat heads. And of course, then I went to some college to get some. But anyhow, made a living. That's what I was trying to do, make a living. And I've met a beautiful young girl. And we just had to have one another, husband and wife, and so I married rather young. But it was good for me. I grew up, and man, I've got children and grandchildren now. And oh, God is so good to us. That's what I want to put.
And
Jehovah, God is good to us. All around the world, He's good to us. Is His people. Whether you're of that political belief or not, God's good to you because your crops grow and make good feed.
Marissa,
nation for your cattle.
2251. Marissa, 2251.
And so you became a farmer when you came back home?
Well, some, but I had to go to school. I went to college and got a good job. And anyhow, well, I wound up as a minister. I was a member of the Church of Christ. And I spoke to little rural congregations and moved on up to larger congregations because I wasn't trained to be a preacher. But it isn't long till you can make a lesson that the audience wants to hear. I know I've done this that was wrong. How can I have forgiveness? Well, forgiveness is at the hand of God. God's the one that we need our forgiveness from if I want to go to heaven. So I seek forgiveness of my sin from God. I want to be forgiven from my Heavenly Father. Am I preaching a sermon?
So after you did, what did you take in college? What kind of courses?
Well, I was business. I worked for after got what little college I got. I worked as an accountant for Chevrolet Cadillac JIK's agency, and it was a pretty big business. You know, I had a good youth, and then finally met my friend that was a girl that, we fell in love, and I was married. First thing you know, here's Louise and Jane and Mark. We had children. You know, you got to work to make a living. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, I have a wonderful life. My life has been great.
Is there anything you would like to add that I did not ask you today?
Anything that I'd like to add? Well, I'm thankful for young men like you that have a job working and asking the questions that you've asked me. And I hope I've given to you a general view of Americans my age, whether we were Republican, Democrat, or Independents. We want you and all of our fellow Americans to prosper. We want you to be successful. Okay. And so regardless of what trade you're in, I think we have the same desire for our country, our world that we live in. And not just America, but Russia. I hope they have a good living. I hope those people that work and labor have a good living in Russia or China or wherever they are. And that they can have the liberty and freedom that you and I have sitting here today.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you, Clyde, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Well,
and I want to thank you also for your military service for our country.
Well, it's a great country. It's a great country. I was thankful that I had the chance of going over there and seeing the end of war and helping those people rebuild. I was thankful that those young Japanese boys that worked in my office at the 1st Cavalry, they said, take me with you. They went back and their homes had been destroyed. And I just said, you just got to go back home and help your fellow people rebuild. That's all we can do. I can't rebuild it. I'm just a one-man guy. But they were good boys. And I want them to be, I hope that today that they're happy with families like I am. Mm-hmm. That's what I hope for my enemy, Japan. But they're not my enemy anymore. They're my friend.
Excellent.
Is that all right?
That's all right. Thank you.